Hi guys, so before we get into it, a couple of quick disclaimers. Firstly, you'll find all my other rankings videos of various franchises in my rankings playlist, and there might be spoilers today, but I'm not planning to go into these movies in any great depth. I'll probably spend a couple of minutes on each one, so in reality, I doubt I'll be spoiling all that much, but I'll just throw the warning out there anyway. So the other night, me and my 14-year-old son went to watch The Final Reckoning, the last film in this series. Yes, it's finally over after all these years. This has always been one of my favourite non-horror franchises, and I go way back with this. I'm not one of those Johnny-come-latelys who just started following Mission Impossible when Christopher McQuarrie turned up. No, I've been with this since the start. Me and my dad rented the original film from a video store when it came out, pretty much. And ever since then, I have eagerly awaited each new release. I haven't seen them all in the cinema. I've gone through various stages of my life where it's not always been possible to catch the latest Mission Impossible in the cinema. But I've always loved the movies, and I'm very happy to now do my ranking. I deliberately held off from doing one after Dead Reckoning came out because I knew that there was going to be one more film, but we can do it now. We can dive in. I'm very keen to get my order together, decide which ones I like less than the others, sort of thing, decide which is my favourite of all time. And to begin with, to kick things off, we will find out what is my least favourite film in this series. So at number 8, we have Mission Impossible 2. If you dig up a load of other Mission Impossible rankings on YouTube or the wider web, you may struggle to find one where this film is not bottom, because this is a very generic, by-the-numbers action film. There's very little about it that is remarkable in any way. It's not a bad film, it's just very plain, very forgettable compared to the other Ethan Hunt adventures. I remember when this came out, I was reading reviews in the newspapers and I could tell that it wasn't going to be up to snuff even before I saw it myself. And then when I did watch it, it's just so straightforward. So Hunt has to try and get this virus back, Chimera, before it spreads into the population. And that's the story. That's it. He has to kill the bad guy, stop the virus, rescue the girl, and there's nothing more complicated about this film than that. And you compare this to the original, which was full of intrigue and mystery and double crosses and twists and turns, and it was riveting. Like, every single scene just seemed to add something new. And then you get to the second film, and it's just so basic in its conception. Maybe they thought this was the way movies were going as we moved into the noughties, but I just don't think John Woo, who directed this, had a great idea about how to take Mission Impossible forward. I really don't. There are some good things about this film. Anthony Hopkins' part is decent. The main leading lady in this, whose name I can't remember, shame on me, she's really good. I'm sad that she didn't go on to be Ethan's wife in the third film, actually. And you get some half-decent action sequences here. The rock climbing's good. The motorbike chase is pretty good, and so forth. But certainly, when I eventually watch all these films in a row in the future, this is the one that I'll look forward to the least. Number 7, we have Mission Impossible 3. This is a big improvement over the second film, even though it's still come very low down on the ranking. It seems to be a thing in some long-running franchises that the second and the third films are the worst. So it's kind of the same in The Fast and the Furious. The second and the third films are a bit... And also Jurassic Park, the second and the third films are a bit... And it's the same with Mission Impossible. Although, like I said, 3 is a lot better than number 2. I remember when this came out, I was going through a little patch of unemployment, and I distinctly remember lying on my bed playing Tomb Raider one afternoon, and a review of Mission Impossible 3 came on the radio, and it sounded pretty good. And at this point, I'd probably not given these films a second thought in years, because there was a big gap between the second and the third films, the biggest gap in the franchise, I believe, at 6 years. So it was kind of cool that Cruise brought the series back to do a third one. And I think if they'd ended with this one, it would have been a good little trilogy, because this film kind of marries the two styles from 1 and 2. So at its heart, this is still an action film that's got a heavy emphasis on the spectacle and the big bangs, but it's also got a lot more in the way of plot wrinkles and twists and little things that just keep you on your toes. You're never quite sure where the story's going, i.e. similar to the first film in a way, although the first film is a lot more complex than number 3. So I think they tried to course correct to a point with number 3. There's a lot to enjoy in this one. The action scene that's on the bridge is very good from memory. And there's also a big jump onto a building, I think, towards the end that I recall. If there's one thing that annoys me about this film, though, it's the opening. So they do this thing where they start off by showing like a torture sequence, an interrogation scene, and then something comes on the screen that says 2 weeks earlier or something like that. And then you've got to watch the rest of the film knowing that you have to get to that point where the interrogation's happening. Now, I really hate it when this plot device is used, whether it's in TV or film. It does tend to happen more in TV. Me and my wife watch a lot of TV together, and we've both agreed for a long time we hate episodes where this is used. Like something happens and then, 3 hours earlier, we just really don't like it. It doesn't usually happen in movies, and I think the reason why it's happened in Mission Impossible 3 is because J.J. Abrams wrote it, and I think he had a big background in TV, but it's by far the most annoying thing about this movie, and probably one of the reasons why I've put this film pretty low down. But other than that, it's still very solid. By the time I get to this one in my run through the films, I'm over the slight disappointment of number 2, and it's easy street for the rest of the way. At number 6, we have Ghost Protocol. So this is the 4th film. So we're going in a kind of sequential order at the moment. That won't last. But I remember watching this one and thinking, wow, they've upped their game again. This is even better than number 3. I saw this Christmas 2011, which I think was the same year as the film's release. I didn't catch it at the cinema. I watched it over the Christmas period with my dad, my wife, and I think our firstborn would have been about 6 months old at this point. So it was a real family affair, and I just loved the movie. I thought it was awesome. And I remember looking back on the series at this juncture and thinking, wow, Cruise has made a real success of this, going back a long time now. And I realised it had been about 15 years at this point, and he'd done 4 movies. Little did I know that we were basically at the halfway point, but Ghost Protocol is the one where I sort of realised I was a massive fan of this thing, and from then onwards, I was regularly keeping my ear to the ground for news of a 5th film. I'd type Mission Impossible into Google every 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, just to see if there were any news snippets. This is not something I did after 2 came out or after 3 came out, so things had definitely changed for me at this point. But this is a top quality film. The highlight of it is undoubtedly the Dubai sequence, which is about in the middle. Cruise is hanging off this building. He's got these gloves that can stick, at least for a while, until they go wrong. And Dubai just looks absolutely gorgeous in this. And there's no weaknesses in the film, really, for me. I've heard some people say that this one doesn't really have a villain. But you know what? There is a good villain in number 3, and yet I would still take Ghost Protocol over number 3 any day of the week. At number 5, we have The Final Reckoning, the big epic conclusion to the whole thing. This is the only film I've seen just the one time, obviously. At the time of doing this video, it's still only been 3 days since the cinema trip, so I'm still kind of digesting what I saw, but most of what I saw was extremely good. I am personally very satisfied with this finale to the whole franchise. Me and my son, we were both talking merrily on the way home from the cinema about all the bits that we'd enjoyed. We both had smiles on our faces, and there was also a tinge of sadness in the air as well. I think that we're never going to see Tom Cruise do another one of these. That being said, I do feel as though this is the weakest of the Christopher McQuarrie ones, and I do have a couple of issues with this film. Firstly, it's very stodgy at like 2 hours and 51 minutes. It's long, and I'd say there are too many flashbacks in the narrative, that there's too many attempts to connect this film to previous ones, and it's just not really warranted. They try and do the same thing that the Bond film Spectre did, and with Spectre it blew up in their faces because critics and fans really didn't like that. This film makes a better job of attempting to do that kind of stuff, but it still felt a little bit forced at times. But leaving the plot aside, the action is just mesmerising. There's two sequences in particular that really made me feel like they were trying to go out with a bang, but without getting too ridiculous, if you see what I mean. There's an amazing part of this film involving a submarine, which is quite lengthy but very satisfying, very exciting, very tense, and also an action scene with a plane, which I thought was magnificent. It's not easy to finish a series like this with a high, especially after everything that's come before with Mission Impossible, but I think they did a really bang-up job. I like this film a lot. If you'd have told me this time last week that I was going to go and watch this and it would turn out to be my fifth favourite out of the 8 films, I think I would have been quite satisfied with that, because some of the films we've still got to talk about are just on another level. Number 4, we have the original Mission Impossible. This feels very different to all the others. It's more of a thriller than an action film, although it does have a big action set piece on a train to finish things off. But everything up to that point, it's all spycraft and clandestine meetings and double crosses, and Ethan Hunt sat in a dark apartment looking for clues on a crappy old computer with a handgun by his side in case anybody turns up. This could almost have been a 60s spy film with a few tweaks. It's really old school and absolutely up my alley. I'm quite sad that they didn't go on to make more Mission Impossible films in this style. I think that would have been amazing, but I guess they had to take the films where the Hollywood wind was blowing. But when this came out, it took me back a bit, because I was a James Bond fan as a child throughout the 80s and 90s. And then this film came out, and I had to begrudgingly admit it was better than a lot of the Bond stuff we were getting around about that time. For me, this is better than GoldenEye. It's better than Tomorrow Never Dies. Pierce Brosnan should have done a Bond film like this. How cool would that have been? But yeah, this is just an awesome film. You know what? I've put it at number 4, but if you think this is the number 1 film, I would shake your hand and call you a top dude or dudette. I would respect the hell out of anybody who thought that this was the best Mission Impossible film. I didn't quite have the balls to go that far, but I sort of wish I had, in a certain way, because it's such a classic film. And out of all the hundreds of films I saw in the 90s growing up, because I just gorged on films as a teenager, this is up there. It was a real surprise that time that me and my dad rented it, and I'm very happy to at least put it in the top half today. And what a cast this had! Not just Tom Cruise in his prime. It's got like Jean Reno, Emilio Estevez. There's people in this you've probably forgotten were in it. Jon Voight. I forget the name of the woman, but she'd been in a few things around about this time. This has probably got a bigger sort of all-star cast than Final Reckoning. Number 3, we have Fallout. So we are into the bronze, silver, gold medal positions now, aka the very best of the Macquarie-Cruise partnership. Fallout is a film that might be top for some people, because critically, this was probably the most well-received out of all the films. I remember when this came out, Cruise just seemed to be getting lavish praise from all four corners of the media about the stunts he was doing and how he had once again taken the series to a new height. I think this has got the highest Rotten Tomatoes score of any of these movies. It's something like 97% or something ridiculous. And I've certainly got very little that I could complain about when it comes to this. And I feel the same about the 2 movies that are still to come as well. If I had to be ultra critical, I think some of the returning characters this time aren't as good as in the previous one. So they bring the villain back from Rogue Nation, but I just don't think he adds a lot by coming back. And also Ilsa, for me, not quite as effective second time around as she was in Rogue Nation, but these are very, very minute complaints. Like, this film is probably 2.5 hours long from memory, and yet it absolutely whistles by. There's so much great action in it. The rooftop chase, the helicopter thing with is it a bomb that's dangling off the... It's brilliant, and the bathroom fight is so intense. Everything that happens in London, and yeah, it's a great film. Henry Cavill as a villain as well. Alec Baldwin is in this one. He plays a really good part in this. So yeah, Fallout for me, massive thumbs up, and on we move to the silver medal position. At number 2 then, we have Dead Reckoning. This is the 7th of the 8 films. It's the first of the 2-part finale. This time last week, though, I couldn't remember it that well. Like, the only thing I could really recall was the outstanding train sequence where the carriages are coming down one by one and Tom Cruise and Hayley Atwell are furiously trying to get back up to the tracks. But apart from that, a lot of the rest of the film was a little bit lost to my memory somehow, even though I only saw it like a couple of years ago. But my son came up with a great idea. He said, why don't we watch Dead Reckoning on the Saturday as a little bit of a recap exercise ahead of when we watch Final Reckoning on Sunday night? And that was a brilliant call by him. And I'm glad he made that suggestion, because after the rewatch, I now feel like this is one of my favourite films in the series. And also, it really helped my viewing of Final Reckoning, because otherwise I think I would have been sat there in the cinema for the first like half an hour, the first hour, like, who's the entity again? Oh, Gabrielle, yeah, he was that. I would have been doing a lot of that, but instead I was fully clued in from minute one about the whole plot and where we were, and it made my watch of Final Reckoning a lot better. But Dead Reckoning for me is the better of the two movies. It's a very varied film. It's not just got amazing stunts like what I was talking about with the train, but also the airport sequence I'd completely forgotten about. It's almost old school Mission Impossible. There's no great stunt. There's just, Cruise walking around with an earpiece, and there's a lot of intrigue. There's different parties entering the airport from different angles, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen next, but there's a lot of subtlety going on, a lot of nuanced stuff. But I like sequences like this, and I really like it when even the newer Mission Impossible films include material like this. I also really like the inclusion of Hayley Atwell. I think it was quite a sensible move at this point to, shall we say, push Ilsa aside. I don't want to give out too many spoilers, and bring this other character, this thief, in. I think that was a smart move. I think you can get too set in your ways just including the same characters over and over again. But I had a great time Saturday night at home rewatching Dead Reckoning. Absolutely top stuff. They were on a hell of a roll with this film, coming on the back of Fallout and Rogue Nation as well. But it's now time to find out what is my number one Mission Impossible film. If you've been paying attention, you will probably have deduced what the film is. Let's find out for sure, though. So number 1, we have Rogue Nation. This is the 5th of the 8 movies. It's my personal favourite. I think this is where Mission Impossible peaked. It just so happens that we stayed kind of close to the peak for the rest of the movies, but I really adore this one. It's so, so good. So just backtracking a little bit, I thought the third film was an improvement over the second one, and then the fourth one was like, wow, this is getting so good now. And then the fifth one, it was just like, whoa. Yeah, I saw this at the cinema and it blew me away. It was definitely one of the best action films I'd ever seen. The introduction of the Ilsa character, truly inspired. Rebecca Ferguson in this film is top dollar. The Opera House scene is amazing. It might be my favourite sequence in the entire franchise. And again, it's an example of Hunt having to use his brains rather than just being part of some insane stunt. He's having to make that crazy decision as to which character he shoots in the place. And he has a fight with this like Aryan henchman at one point, and there's just so much tension. And the music, Pavarotti, it's great. It really is. And there are other great action scenes in the film as well. The bike chase, the jump into the underwater machine thing. This is the one where Cruise is hanging off the side of an airplane to kick things off. That really gets you into the movie straight away. So It's brilliant, this one. I wouldn't say it's comfortably my favourite, but when I sat down to do this ranking, it only took me like a minute to realise that this was going next to that number one, and the rest of the order I'd have to think about a little bit. I just think Rogue Nation, it is the bee's knees. So there we are. So, okay, we're all done. I've done my Mission Impossible ranking. I'd love to hear your ranking in the comments below. And you know what? If you've not seen Final Reckoning yet, why not go ahead and rank the first 7 movies? I am definitely very sad that this franchise has come to an end. But you know what? All things have to come to an end eventually. Even this channel will one day come to an end because I am not immortal, sadly. Right, I'm going to end it here before I start babbling. I'll catch you all again next time. Bye-bye.